Welcome to the Erie Wellness Podcast, your go-to source for all things health, wellness, and living your best life right here in Erie. I'm your host, Lauren Brunetti, and I'm so excited to have you here. Each episode will dive into conversations with local experts and wellness professionals who are making an impact in the world of health and well-being. Before we jump in, be sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. We love hearing from you and seeing our community grow. Now let's get started. Welcome back to the Erie Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Brunetti, and today's guest has an incredible story of resilience and strength. Christina's wellness journey began only 11 years of age when she was diagnosed with a late-stage cancer and given less than a 20% chance of survival. Through hope, determination, and support, she overcame the odds, but her challenges didn't end there. The treatment that saved her life led to lasting health impacts, including another cancer diagnosis. Despite these obstacles, Christina embraced gratitude and a warrior mindset, dedicating herself to helping others do the same. She became one of the first 1,000 national board-certified health and wellness coaches in the world, combining decades of experience in human behavior with her passion for empowering others, as well as getting Reiki certified and currently getting her 200-hour yoga certification. I'm so excited to have her here today to share her journey and insights. Christina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today. You were only 11 years old when you were diagnosed with cancer, and the treatment that cured your childhood cancer later led to various other health challenges as an adult. Can you share more about how those experiences shaped your perspective on health and what inspired you to eventually become a health coach?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So because it was, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but the 80s when I had basically full body radiation, that was what caused the most complications as an adult. I'm in survivorship programs where I do studies and surveys and things like that, and learned all the things I'm high risk for, like thyroid cancer, which I ended up getting, heart disease, which I'm being surveilled for, breast cancer. I'm also being surveilled, have a surveillance program for that. But also because of the radiation, I've had probably up to 12 different surgeries where I've lost lots of internal body parts, thankfully none that are really, really important. But there's a lot of challenges. And for me, it's really important for my, body to be as healthy and strong as possible. And also where my focus for me, my struggles are my mind, the presence, the mindfulness, the quiet mind. I definitely am one of those type A, always busy. So I've started to think about ways that I can improve myself. And it's a constant struggle. I am by no means perfect. And then how I can work with others in the cancer space, but also in general, because everybody needs self-care. So for me, I originally thought about becoming a personal trainer, but then I start to think a little bit more full 360 wellness, where it does touch mind, body, soul. And that's when I start to get into the health and wellness coaching. And as a child, when I was diagnosed, as I think back, the things like support of family and friends, the positive attitude, which health and wellness coaching is all based on positive psychology, I embraced all that. I did visualization, I did energy healing, which is where it would lead me to my Reiki certification. But as much as I can do to keep my body and my brain and my soul in a good space and surround myself with people who could provide the support that I needed, led me on this journey to become a health and wellness coach.
I love all of that. And you can only, diet and exercise is one part of health, but there's a lot of other components that contribute to how you function throughout your day.
Exactly. And learning about the different dimensions of wellness too. Everybody always thinks it's like the physical piece, but there's so many more areas that, when you think about it, everybody could benefit from, and the balance across all of them is really important.
Right. Yeah, I was dealing with some digestive issues and I tried to control it with diet and exercise. And then once I started focusing on nervous system regulation and reducing stress, I actually saw a huge change in those type of issues as well. So,
yeah, absolutely.
What do you love most about being a part of the wellness space here in Erie?
I think so. I'm a former New Yorker, lived in Manhattan, embraced that crazy city life. And then when we moved out here, just the way people embrace their health and wellness, and like the ability to be outdoors, the sunshine, like, and so many small businesses and entrepreneurs that are struggling, in all these different areas to make a business work, family work, friendships work, relationships work. So I feel like there's a great community of people who could benefit from this also, because occupational wellness, we'll talk about the dimensions, but that's one of the big dimensions too, where people need that life balance. So for me, it's moving into an area where it feels like people are open to it for sure. And the small feel of the community of Erie too, it just gives you that support you need too.
Right. I'm excited to talk about that work-life balance piece because I feel like so many of us need that. I know my to-do list is always never ending, so it'll be good to talk to you as we walk through those
Yes,
different dimensions. But can you define wellness through the 8 dimensions that you've kind of lined up in your coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the important part to remember about wellness is it's an active process, right? You're engaging, you're actively, working towards overall health and wellness. And the dimensions are physical, which is what you think about when you think of diet and exercise, but it's also, illness and injury prevention or management if you have chronic conditions, those kinds of things. Then there's intellectual wellness, like curiosity, creativity, like, challenging your brain in that space and making sure you're growing in that space. Then there's spiritual, which is sort of like the bigger universe. It can be religious. It doesn't have to be. It really just is a personal choice of what spiritual means to each person.
Right.
Occupational, which we touched on, is sort of like, are you basically doing the work that has meaning and purpose to you? And not everybody's lucky to be able to be in that space, but working with what you can and making sure that you have that work-life balance too in whatever career or job you're in. Emotional, which is sort of the brain piece, right? The connections, emotional meaning your relationship with yourself and others in an emotional relationship. Social, your surroundings, family, friends. That's another big important part to be able to work on, because you do need that support as you're going through the process. You're getting support from your coach, but you also need the support of a social group, whoever that is for you. Environmental, it's another one. Like, people think environment, and it does include, like, the state of climate change, and if that stresses you out, but it's also your environment that you work in or you live in, and how that brings you calm and balance also. And then financial is not necessarily like I'm helping you pick stocks. It's not like financial planning, but if you need to figure out, like, you're overspending and you don't need to be, we could set goals to help you sort of rein that in. We can help you set long and short-term goals financially that you could work with a financial planner. And I think that's one of the important things when you think about, like, working with somebody like me as a health and wellness coach. I'm not an expert. I'm not telling you what to do. The goal is for me to work with you so you set the appropriate goals and the appropriate mindset and mind shifts that work for you. So people are like, can't you just tell me what to do? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Because my goal, it's almost like teaching a baby, like letting them learn to walk, right? You're helping them, you're lifting them up, but they're learning on their own. And there's a term called self-efficacy in coaching where, my goal is to work with you and set the appropriate path for you based on your unique needs, that you don't need me anymore, which is a good thing. And also, like, it again with the dimension, just going back to those 8 dimensions, it's also important to find balance in each one, and also to acknowledge that each one is not important to each person. They're all very different. So where you might think you're doing okay in intellectual, you don't really want to make any changes there. That's okay. There's no judgment in coaching either. And there's no pressure to try and work on all of them. Nobody would be able to do that all at once. So it's identifying which ones are really important for you to start with. And then if you continue with a coach, we work on all the ones that end up being important down the road.
Right. And I feel too, depending on what season of your life you're in, you can put more focus into certain areas.
Yes, absolutely.
But I love the idea of, you're kind of keeping people within a lane and kind of guiding them through. It doesn't matter how you like go along that path, but you're kind of telling them and giving them advice on how to, keep going.
Yeah. And I'm trained to ask the questions to help people identify which ones are the priority for themselves. So I wouldn't say, hey, let's start with this. It's very client driven. Like I said, I've had the training and the certifications to know the questions to ask and figure out what stage of change you're at, because not everybody's there's 5 different stages of readiness for change. And it's my job to figure out where you are and help you set appropriate path based on that. But when it comes to prioritizing the dimensions of wellness, I really just help you understand which is the priority and which you need to start with, and or which couple you want to start with.
Okay. So, what kind of individuals do you typically work with? Do you offer one-on-one? Do you offer group coaching options?
Yeah, so one-on-one is the best in my mind, because you're able to be yourself and be the most open, because it does get very emotional. Even people don't think it will be, but I'm asking the questions that cause you to think really deeply. Like, you
Mhm.
might come to me and say, "Hey, I'm really struggling with my weight. I want to lose 5 pounds." That's an outcome. But then we start unpacking what's behind that. And it could be a challenge in a relationship. It could be you're unhappy with your job. So with the one-on-one coaching, we start with the first session of like 90 minutes where we really figure out, everybody uses the word vision statement. I don't love the statement. I think of it more like if you're looking out over the ocean, which I love, that's my favorite place, and you're
Mhm.
looking at the horizon, like, what do you look like at your personal ideal level of health and wellness, not somebody else's, and not meeting society's expectations or a friend's expectations or a partner's expectations, but like, what does that look like for you? And
Mhm.
there's a lot of emotional unpacking of that, like how to get there. So the one-on-one is ideal, I think personally for clients, but I really managed to figure out small group workshops where we still have the conversations, we could still figure out the priorities, but I always give people a notebook, because if they do not want to share or don't feel comfortable sharing out loud, they can write their own private thoughts. So you could still get the benefits, but you're not having that one-on-one conversation. And then another thing I'm working on, which is my goal for next year, is a retreat. So once I have my second Reiki certification and my yoga, and using friends, family that are in this space, I really want to create a retreat where people could just get away.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Mhm.
So you mentioned weight loss being a reason why someone would come to you, but what are some of like the other things that come up that you see consistently as to why people reach out and are like, Christina, I could use your help?
Yeah, honestly, it's really a lot of it is like they're just sort of overwhelmed with everything they want to work on. And it's time to have that support and that accountability. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's one particular thing. Sometimes it's like running a business and they're really stressed out over like running or starting a new business, or to your point, like the weight loss thing, or just getting healthier in general. But a lot of times it's like all the things. Like, I've had people come to me with lists of things that they want to work on, and a lot
Mhm.
of them are outcomes. Like, these are all things I want to get to. But the beauty of like coaching and working with somebody is like you really understand the whys and the behind. And sometimes a lot of the things they come to work on go away because they don't really end up being a priority. There's other things that will help and lead to like those better options.
Mhm.
So, I can't say it's one particular thing, but I do think it is when people start to feel overwhelmed with everything going on in their life, and they just need the support and the accountability. And it involves goal setting, right? I mean,
Mhm.
everybody, writes a to-do list or can set their own goals, but what I do is we help set like appropriate goals, and we talk about each goal, and if it's going to be challenges, if they're not completely confident. And there's no need to impress me. People always feel like, oh, I need to like eat vegetables 10 times this week, and they never ate a vegetable. Like, okay, let's talk about how that's going to work, right? And I help them
Mhm.
create like a manageable goal for them to come back to me and be like, yeah, I did. I ate vegetables once this week. And that's all you need to do for the forward path, right? And it
Mhm.
zigzags. It doesn't matter what the path looks like. It's just making
Mhm.
sure you take those baby steps forward. And it's all based on positive psychology. So if you come to me and you say, "Oh, I didn't even do this goal." Well, tell me like what went well? Well, I thought about it and I came up with like something I might do next week. Okay, that's something, right? That's a forward movement in that space. And
Mhm.
that's where I reevaluate the readiness for the goals, and I help them understand where they are in the process.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking I've seen these images. It's like what people think consistency is, and
Mhm.
it's like a glass half full, or I mean, a glass full all the time. But
Mhm.
then there's pictures, 7 days of glasses. Some of it's half full, some of it's a quarter full, some of it's like
Mhm.
three quarters full. So it really just it varies, but as long as
Mhm.
you're being consistent.
Yep, exactly, exactly. And working through, I mean, we could reset a goal with a client like 6 times, but that's okay because it means they weren't the right goals for you. So
Mhm.
and that's what I help each week. So if you do work with me like on a weekly basis, after you create that vision, the first session is always creating that vision, like that where you are over on the horizon, no
Right.
timestamp on that. But we do set, once we identify like the areas you really want to focus on first, we set 3-month goals. So all sessions are 3 month. All like if you come to work with me, it's a 3-month commitment up front because, all the studies show the habits, the behaviors, and then you're working towards those 3-month goals by meeting with me weekly and setting smaller, those what they call SMART goals, which I'm sure everybody knows SMART
Mhm.
goals at this point in time, but like those smaller, reachable, measurable goals that are time bound each week to help you get to your goals. So it's kind of like it's part of this longer process, and
Mhm.
like I said, I'm their accountability partner.
Can you just walk us through like goal setting, and how people can set a realistic wellness goal? I mean, even if it's, I don't eat that many vegetables per week. So what's like a reasonable, realistic wellness goal for that?
Right. And so that's where they'll be back and forth with the client. So like I'll use myself an example because I need like some kind of like quiet and meditation. That's where my biggest struggle is. Like my brain's always going and it's not a good thing. I
Mhm.
always say stop the over glorification of being busy because it's not a good thing, right?
Mhm.
It's okay to be busy, but sometimes, but you need the
Right?
balance. So
I know
so
I jump into bed sometimes and my brain is just going and I'm sharing all of my ideas with my husband and he's like, "It's 10 PM, like, shut that brain down." I'm like, "I know, but I have so many ideas."
Exactly, exactly. So it's like, and it's just not healthy for us. So for me, like I'm the worst at meditation. I'm worst at making time for it. Once I do it, I'm like, oh my God, that was so great, right?
Mhm.
But for me, like a realistic 3-month goal. So if I'm thinking 3 months out when I work with my coach, the reality is knowing my schedule, knowing the way my brain works, I could say like I want to be meditating 3 times a week, 3 months from now for like 15 minutes each time. Now,
Mhm.
again, when you say smaller chunks like 15 minutes, doesn't mean I can't meditate for a half hour, right? We want
Mhm.
something that'll be most manageable for you and your goals. It doesn't mean you can go past that or more than that, but it's like
Right.
you consistently will be doing a behavior in 3 months. So
Mhm.
for me, realistically, I'm even questioning that, right? So I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe 2 times a week for 10 minutes. That's probably realistic for me. So that would be my 3-month goal. And then
Mhm.
every week when we talk, you don't always address the 3-month goals because there's a time in the conversation weekly, which is what's really on the person I'm working with's mind. So it's like whatever is really important and priority for that meditation goal can go out the window if something else is going on that they really need help and support and to set a goal around.
Mhm.
So, but we never forget about it. We always like kind of regroup on your 3-month goals at the midway point. So for me, like, all right, so if I say I want to be meditating twice a week, minutes, that feels comfortable to me as a coach. A coach would say to me, how confident are you? What do you perceive as any obstacles? Like why is it important to you? That's a big one because that drives motivation, right? Something that's
Right.
really important. And if it turns out it's not that important to me, I'm not going to do it. And there's a reason, then that just goes away. And that's okay. But I know what's important to me. So I have to figure out how to make it work. So
Mhm.
my weekly goal might be I'm just going to check out meditation apps just to see what's out there. Like that could be a starting point, right? Because
Mhm.
if I don't really know what's out there, I don't know what's going to work for me. My
Mhm.
first weekly goal could be like, oh, I'm going to check out Calm and I'm going to check out Headspace and see what I think. And that's it. That's okay, right? That's just
Mhm.
the process where I am. Um,
Right. And totally manageable. Like, that doesn't sound overwhelming
yep,
versus doing it 20 minutes every day.
yes, yeah, and it's funny how many people come in like I'm like I don't need to be impressed. There is no judgment on my part, and like I'm not going to be disappointed if you don't accomplish what you need to. So there's that understanding and that back and forth too. That like I hold you in the highest positive regard. I am not saying I'm a cheerleader. I'm not gonna be like rah 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 go, but I'm going to hold you where you in your space. I'm going to meet you where you are and help you figure it out. That's really what it boils down to.
In your experience, how does ongoing support and accountability contribute to achieving long-term wellness goals?
I think it's really important. I mean, and as a coach, I am coached also. And when you have that accountability partner, some people just benefit just from that, right? Knowing somebody's checking in, somebody's in this journey with them and walking alongside them, I
Mhm.
think is really important. I think if you're not coached and working properly and you set too many like goals that are not achievable or not the right goals for you, which is why it's important to work with somebody who really understands you and understands where you are in those like readiness to change behaviors,
Mhm.
that you can be disappointed because you constantly are coming back and not achieving what you are setting as a goal, which is why it's just as important to work with somebody who's going to make sure those goals are really what you want to do and what you can do. And there's a whole conversation when you're goal setting to make sure, like we ask confidence scales, and if people are like a 5, we would make that a 7.
Mm-hmm.
So like meditating 5 times a week. Oh, I'm going to meditate 5 times this week, and then they're like, well, how confident are you that you're going to come back to me next week and say, yeah, I meditated 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, thinking about my week, thinking about my lack of experience, I'm going to say a 5, maybe a 6. So a coach would be like, okay, what gets that to like a 7 or an 8? And you have a conversation back and forth. And then I might be like, you know what? Just looking into apps might be something that I need to do this week.
Mm-hmm.
So while the client's setting the goal, the coach is working with them to make sure it's the right goal for where they want to be.
Do you also encourage your clients to share their goals like with their spouse or their kids, and you don't feel like this pressure to just get it done by yourself without the help of the other people inside your house and your family?
Yeah, so support is a big thing, and it might not necessarily for some people come from inside the house, but it is important to, ask about that, what support they have, what's worked in the past, who's helped them in the past in their lives,
Mm-hmm.
then make sure that that person like can be tagged in as needed. Some people want that, some people don't. Again, it's really driven by the person I'm working with. So if they feel like, you know what, I'm not really comfortable in that space, like talking to other people about it, that's okay. It
Mm-hmm.
is a better scenario if you have could be like a second cousin 5 states away. It doesn't matter. But if you have somebody that you can tap into, that is helpful for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
again, you can't tell somebody you need to talk to so and so about this. It really has to be up to them.
Mm-hmm.
But it does help, yes, for sure.
I know that you prioritize being strong and healthy mentally, spiritually, and physically. So, how do you encourage your clients to do the same when they're focused on their health and wellness goals?
So again, there's the encouragement piece, and they're like I said, hold them in high positive regard. I help them figure out where they want to be. I will never tell them to do this in the health and wellness space because that's not the job of a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will help them figure out, where they want to be and what they need to do to get there. But the encouragement comes from, we brainstorm ideas. So if they're stuck, we can brainstorm ideas. If they're set in a certain way about something, we could do this exercise around, it's called decisional balance, where it's like, okay, so if this never happens and this never changes, like really extreme, what does that look like for you? And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh yeah, that's not good. Okay, so what can we do to help you make it change? So the encouragement is there, the support is there, the accountability is there, but I would never say to somebody, hey, if you want to lose weight, you need to work out 4 times a week, or you need to change your diet. They have to come to that conclusion on their own. That's the whole point of like the coaching process, because I'm asking the right questions that help them figure that out. Now,
Mm-hmm.
again, I also can refer out, like if somebody really wants to start an exercise program, I do have a pool of people that I can refer to. If somebody wants to, start doing more massages to get more like quiet time for themselves, I can refer out. But yeah, so like you're encouraging them, but you're not telling them. That's the big difference. And some
Mm-hmm.
people want that. I'm like, I can't, that's not my job. I'm not trained to do that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just think about it. Like if somebody tells you to do something, first thing you're gonna be like, no, I'm not doing it because you told me to do it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's known psychological like practice. Like people know this. It's proof that like if you're told what to do, you're gonna automatically rebel because I don't know you better than you know you. I'll
Right.
help you figure you out, but I don't know you better.
Mm-hmm. And everyone has someone not might not want to go to the spa or whatever. That might not be relaxing to them,
Mhm,
but if they, go do some art or go do something different, that might
mhm.
be very
Yes.
relaxing for them as well.
Yes.
So,
And that's where the brainstorming, when people are stuck and they don't know where to start, we can brainstorm. So I can throw out ideas out there with somebody, but
mhm,
in the end, it's their choice whether they want to set a goal. And it's interesting because you could talk about something for a half hour and they're really passionate about it. And they're like, okay, is this something you would like to set a goal on this week? And they'll say no. I'm like, okay, that means they're not ready, right? They're not ready to address it or deal with it for whatever reason. So
mhm,
as a coach, you just have to let that go because even if you force them to set something that they're not ready to do, they're going to come back to you and either one, resent that you're telling them what to do or not have success. And the goal is to create the success. And it also means that it's really important for them in the moment. And it might come up again down the road, but for now, it's not important enough for them to set a goal or they're not emotionally ready to do this,
mhm,
which is
mhm.
perfectly fine. But that's all the things that I help them figure out and understand.
How much do you think external, like social media, influences people and what they think that their expectations should be and what they think their goals should be? When in reality, it looks a lot different for them, but they're putting the pressure on themselves because they see things on
Mhm.
social media.
Yeah, I think social media, I think partners, friends, I think everything plays a role. And that the most important part of like when we're doing this first session is making sure that like they're doing these things for themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
it's for their self-care. It's not for them to look better for somebody else or to be, now again, relationships could improve, but it's all because you're working on yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to try your best to like have them take that piece out of it,
Mm-hmm.
because yes, it's important, especially when it comes to things like your image or your how you feel about your weight. Yes, you're going to compare it to all these other people, but you know and you want to lose weight, that's great, but you want to figure out why you want to do it. And if it's for somebody else, it's going to be really hard to achieve because it's not something that's really important to you. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something I struggle with too. Like I was overweight my entire life, and to this day I weigh myself every day. It's probably like my biggest challenge of area I can control. And I know it's all in my head, but like I will never get over the fact that I want to lose more weight because I want to be healthier. And I have all these things in my head about like what my perfect weight should be, but it causes stress, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, am I doing it for other people? No, because my husband's super supportive. He doesn't care. Nobody judges me anymore. It's not like when you're in high school, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
all personal. So for me, I have to work through with my coach and I'm in my brain that it's, you know what, it might be just okay as long as I'm working out 5 days a week. I eat well. I track everything. If I just stay this weight for my rest of my life, but that's going to take me a long time to get to that point, and it's something I have to work on. So, but I know I'm doing it. I'm creating my own pressure. So, like if I was working with somebody in the same space and they were creating their own pressure, I would talk to them. I probably help them better than I help myself because I do that a lot. And help them understand like the whys, like why is it important for you to like lose that 5 pounds? And if it's, and if we unpack the whys and it really isn't that important, I'll help them with self-acceptance, which is a lesson I need to learn. So it's one thing too. Your coach is never perfect. We're all a work in progress. We're in it with you. I know how to help you. Don't always know how to help myself.
That's how I feel about my kids sometimes. I'm like, I would be so sympathetic to you and offering you empathy. And then I look around at me and I'm like, why can't I get my stuff together? I feel like I'm always running late, all of these things. But I would tell my kids, like, it's okay to be late every once in a while. Like, you can't be perfect all the time.
Mhm.
But
Yep, exactly.
you mentioned like your first session. Can you walk us through what a typical first session or experience looks like
Mhm.
for a client?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically that's the longest session when you commit. It's about 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending, but it
Hmm.
really unpacks like sort of what's going well in the space right now for you in health and wellness overall, what your expectations are, your outcomes are. And then I start asking questions about like, what are your perceived strengths, things that you value, what's important to you. And as you hear things, you kind of adjust obviously the conversation as you're hearing things, but you do understand like if you want to work on certain areas, like what's worked well in the past, what were your supports, talking about like people around you,
Hmm.
what was the environment like, what did you rely on to help you get through this in the past if you did, and if you didn't, we talk about like strategies for moving forwards. And as we're having this whole conversation, listening for the things that sort of create their vision
Hmm.
and what that looks like. And then when I write the vision for them, it's using their own words based on all these conversations and what's going really well, what they want their outcome to be, what their strengths are, where they see themselves. If you paint a picture of yourself with this ideal health and wellness, what does it look like? And then I share that vision with them, and it's their vision, it's not mine. So they are free to edit it, change it, do whatever they want with it. But it's written in the I am, like even though it's out there and there's no timestamp on it, it's
Hmm.
written like I am strong, I am healthy, I am enjoying life, I am traveling more. Like so it's whatever they want it to be. I have great relationships with my husband, I have a great social group with my friends, like whatever it is, it's very personal.
Hmm.
And then we set the first set of goals, like the 3 month goals. We come up with like, okay, of all the things we talked about today, which you want to think about working on first? And again, it doesn't mean we're never going to touch the others, but like what are the areas that really pop for you that this is the area I want to make change in first? And then
Hmm.
we'll set some 3 month goals around that. And usually it's dependent on the client. There's no pressure in terms of like the number of 3-month goals, but it's usually 2 or 3. Some people want 4. I never tell them a number, but I will ask, are there any other goals you want to set? And if they say no, okay, good, great. So once we establish the 3-month goals, we know we're going to be meeting next week. We'll set the first set of weekly goals. And again, same thing is like it could be 1, it could be 4. It's not up to me how many people set. And if people have a really busy week and they're only comfortable setting 1, that's okay. So, and then, so that's like the first session. And then each week when you meet, you go over the goals from the prior week, what went well, just get their thoughts on how that went. And then we talk about whatever's important to them in that week. And it could be totally unrelated to their vision. It could be whatever is their need to have a conversation with me about in that moment. And it's actually called the generative moment in coaching. And it's like sort of like whatever is on your mind that really just needs to be addressed. And it doesn't matter if it relates to your vision or not. It's just what you really need to talk about. And sometimes goals come out of that and sometimes they don't. But at the end of the session, we'll talk about like the types of goals they want to set for the following week. And the weekly goals are definitely like the SMART, specific, measurable, time-bound, actionable goals. Like those are real SMART goals. The 3-month goals are a little bit more broad scope.
Okay. And that's awesome to get that support weekly.
Yeah. And like I said, the original commitment is 3 months. And then I don't hold any other time frame in terms of like you have to commit to X. Like if people want to continue after that, it's month to month. And they could walk away at any time. I just asked that they let me know like 2 weeks before so we could think about ways to wrap it up. That's all. So, but yeah, after the 3 months, it's monthly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were sharing about creating kind of like those I am statements. Last summer, at the very beginning of the summer, I wrote myself a letter of like the things that I wanted to accomplish and like writing it in the first person. And I reread that letter every morning during like my quiet and prayer time. And it was so, I don't know, enlightening, and a lot of things have come true just from like and just the type of person that I wanted to be, and just rereading that letter. So that's cool that you do that with your clients as well.
And I always suggest like posting it somewhere, your vision, where you see it also, because it helps you to just know that this is what what your journey is taking you towards, right? That's like the whole point. And then, the weekly goals are I will. So I will work out X times a week. I will meditate twice. So it's always like it's happening, because that's again, that's a psychological mindset based on years of studies, is that if you say you're doing it or you say you are it, it makes a difference in how your perception, you're moving forwards.
Great. That's also good. You mentioned retreats, but what exciting developments or new offerings do you have planned for 2025?
So I'm starting to do the workshops. So those are fairly new to me. And that's where it's a little bit different because it is group. I've done 2 so far. I've got another one coming up next weekend, actually a 3-week one. That'll be my first 3-week in a row one. So they're kind of exciting because they're a little bit different. We work with what's called a wellness wheel, and mine is a sunflower because that's my flower. And we do an exercise where you, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where you are in each of the 8 dimensions of wellness that we talked about. And we pick a priority area. Everybody has their own dimension that they can choose to focus on. And so same types of questions and all, but more of a group setting. And so hoping to do more of those. Like I said, the retreat, the yoga certification is not necessary for me to teach yoga, but if I'm doing like a retreat or if I'm doing a workshop that I want to focus on like energy or calm, I can incorporate the limbs of yoga. Everybody knows, like, or maybe not everybody knows, I'm learning this. So like the poses are just one of the limbs of yoga. But there's this really like these yoga philosophies around energy and balance and truth that are really cool to incorporate into workshops. So I want to be able to do that also, which is why I want to get the certification. And then the retreat, like I said, for next year. But the other thing that I really want to start to do is work with people who are either going through cancer treatment or coming out of cancer treatment, and just offer my services to them. Because back in New York, I worked with about 25 different cancer support groups at a cancer center where I used to live. And it's amazing, like people going through like the most horrible of cancers and like still had the same like issues with self-care and family relationships and dynamics that like not even related to what they were going through for cancer. So if I can help them just like sort of have the attention and like the accountability in terms of like, I'm in this with you and the support, that's really where I want to like take the next step of this coaching. For sure.
Yes, I'd love to have you back on the podcast to share more about what you've learned from your own cancer journey and how you're
Mhm.
now helping others navigate that space. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah, I would love it. Absolutely.
Um, yeah. So for those interested in working with you, what's the best way to get started?
They can either, I mean, I don't know if you want to, I have a Peaceful Elephant coaching on Instagram, but if you go to peacefulelephant.com, there's a contact me page and it goes directly to my email. My cell phone number is on there. So if anybody wants to reach out, they can do it that way for
Okay.
sure.
Is there an application on your website or
No, it's just a
no?
form to fill out. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like,
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes so
yeah,
that people can see
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Christina. I enjoyed our conversation so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks for just sharing your own journey as well as just giving some basic tips and insights, as well as describing the 8 dimensions of wellness and just really how we all need to make sure that we're focusing on a more holistic approach to our wellness routines.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on too. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Erie Wellness Podcast. I truly appreciate you being a part of this journey. If you loved today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. For more daily wellness inspiration and behind the scenes content, be sure to follow me on Instagram at the Erie Wellness Podcast. I can't wait to connect with you again